Welcome to ACS Technology's Enabling the Changing Catholic Church podcast.
I'm Terry Poplava, host of Enabling the Changing Catholic Church podcast. I'm here today talking with the Reverend Charles Salter and Mark Joseph. Chuck Salter is an ordained Methodist minister and also one of the founders of Mission Insight. He has a great breadth of experience across denominations. And Mark is the vice president of Outreach and Evangelization at Franciscan University in Steubenville. His work has led him to be engaged directly with many parishes across the country, as well as with the well-known Steubenville conferences and the other work that they do as a university. I'm excited to be talking to them about, in a 4-part series, about how do we learn from each other? What can we learn from our perspectives? And what does it mean for engaging with our community, for taking part as churches in serving our communities, both internally and externally? We've talked about growth and we've talked about evangelism and evangelization. Our next topic is engagement. What does it mean to be engaged in your church? And what is our perspective on engagement? For many years, I have been a part of the discussion of stewardship and engagement at our International Catholic Stewardship Conferences, and many of our parishes and our dioceses in the Catholic Church. That led to a movement that still exists called the Strengths and Engagement Community, founded largely on the basis of work that Gallup had done and the early research of Al Winsman about what it means to be engaged. And there seems to be a pretty particular way we've interpreted that in the Catholic Church. To me, I'm thinking it's about the people in our parish already, and how do we get them involved and invested in the church, and sometimes that gets tied to giving, although that's not really what it's about. It's really about discipleship, but I'm thinking it's primarily about the existing community. Would you say that, Mark? Have you been involved in any of the strengths and engagement topics? And what do you have to say about engagement?
Yeah, I've done Strength Finders type of work and Strength Finders in a Catholic context. I think that you're right on in terms of the Catholic Church having an internal focus in relation to engagement and evangelization. I also would argue, though, that might not be a bad thing, in that I strongly believe that as we're discussing, the vast majority of Catholics who are in the pews every single week don't know the love of Christ. And in truly being evangelized and having that encounter and gaining that personal relationship with Jesus, they then are going to be on fire for their faith and go out and share it. So I think that the Catholic Church actually has this army in reserve already in the pews, that we need to really be intentional about sharing the love of Christ and then arming them to go out. So although there's a step number 2, which is outward focused, I think as a Catholic Church, given our history and what we've done to date, there's a step number 1, which is evangelizing those in the pews and arming them to go do the Lord's work.
Oh, that's great. What is the scripture, put on the armor of light? Is that it, I think? Chuck, how about you? What do you think of when you talk about engagement?
Well, I want to just agree that it is certainly important internally and externally, but I think it's completely relational. I think you have to have a heart change, or you really can't engage anybody. And so I think that starts with the personal. Well, John Wesley said his heart was strangely warm, and all of a sudden his ministry was completely transformed. I think that's absolutely true about every one of us. Interestingly enough, when I think about, when you put the word community in front of engagement, all of a sudden things change for me, because at that point, then it's what I spent my last 25 years doing. And that's saying, how do you love your neighbor if you don't know your neighbor? And your neighbor are all those people out in the community. But in the Protestant world, we have a lot of churches that are vital that have life groups or journey groups, where there's small groups that are gathering together to build relationships. That is absolutely engagement. So I think it is sort of a both and. I think it is building relationships in the church so that people sharpen each other's faith, if you will, using kind of a biblical image. And at the same time, that passion that happens to you when you're engaged with other disciples, I think, is naturally externally focused then. So
you think community engagement really needs to reach out to the, you mentioned, like, if you don't know your neighbor, you're thinking about everyone that's in the surrounding geography around the church.
I sure am.
In fact, I think if I remember right, you even tell a story of one of the churches you pastored where you went out and about looking at the neighborhoods to see what was there.
Well, I was a church planter. You simply have to do that. And you don't go knock on doors. I mean, that doesn't work too well in our day today, But there's a story of, I was with a math group, a church that I was a part of. And one of the things that we were doing is having donuts at the table. And someone said, and I had gotten the donuts from a place literally on the edge of the parking lot, and maybe a Dunkin' Donuts. And someone said, oh, they're great donuts there, but there's a better donut shop, downtown. So on. I said, well, it's not about the donuts, is it? It's really about the people who gather at that place and don't even know that we're here. They may not know why the church even exists in this neighborhood. So for us, engagement means being present in the community in all kinds of ways. Sometimes it's called third places, where you think about the first place being your family, the second place being where you work and spend your time, and the third place being where do people gather socially, and how do we build relationships in those places?
In fact, there's even some concepts of dinner church and some of that type of thing that's emerged, right, Chuck?
That's absolutely right.
And those things happen in the context of Catholic. We don't necessarily put a name to them, or we allow it to happen organically. But again, while we're aware of our surrounding community, Mark, I think our concept of engagement really is either active parishioners or maybe trying to find those who aren't active who were active. Seems like the kind of priority that we place on who we're looking for. Is that how you see it?
I would say yes, active parishioners. I don't see much going on in the Catholic Church that would indicate that we're going after even past parishioners. And I think that, for whatever reason, I guess it's a cultural thing, Catholics just aren't comfortable with, there are obviously exceptions to the rule, right? But I think on a broad base, Catholics aren't comfortable with sharing their faith. And I think that it's not just strangers, it's people in our families. One of us, it crosses denominations. One of the challenges with Christianity is how many of our youth that we're losing from the faith, right? I mean, that's not just a Catholic issue, although it's significantly a Catholic issue. And we haven't armed our parents or grandparents to share that faith with their children, nor so do they have the conviction to do it, or they'd be doing it. Again, I think that gets back to the love of Christ issue, and I can be accused of being single-threaded on that issue.
Well, I think you're right. It doesn't have to be about, apologetics. We don't have to talk about all the details of the faith. It's just about being evidence of being joyful in our celebration. I'm going to go back to one of the things I do firmly believe in terms of engagement is there is a responsibility of the church or parish to demonstrate a level of impact of ministry so that there is good stewardship of resources by the leadership of the church. I do hang on to that one. To me, that's one element of engagement that I would say is critical to say we are headed in unity toward our mission. Our mission as an individual church, why we're here, and here is how we are helping the people of our church. And witness talks are a really good way to help that as well. But I see that as important to bringing people along and reminding them that we're not just here for Catholics, we're not just here to attend Mass. so that we feel better when we leave. And of course, that's not universally true. It is the source and summit of our faith. That is probably one of the most important things we have. But that as an organization, the parish has a purpose of moving forward in ministry, and we want to see that our gifts, our financial gifts, are put to a good use to furthering the presence of Christ on earth. I think that's good. Yes, Chuck.
Well, I think the other thing that makes people, fills them with fear, is that somehow engagement is preaching.
Yeah.
It's not. It has nothing to, it's not about preaching. It is about offering yourself as a friend to someone who may just need that moment of comfort. When I'm going into parish councils or churches, and in the Mission Insight world, and we've identified the fact that 35 to 40% of the families with children are single parents. Do we have an opportunity for engagement there? What does that mean? It doesn't mean going out and necessarily witnessing initially. It may just mean caring for some of the needs of single parents, which are complex today. And often we don't think that way. We think somehow it's got to be a moment of witness where we give a testimony. No, it may lead to that, but really, if they know you love them, because maybe you provide a place for their children after school, is a powerful statement about love and caring for people. That's engagement.
It's evangelization too.
Absolutely.
Yes. Yes. And the witness I was talking about is how the church has helped me and my family, which is, I think, very powerful. But I also totally agree that we don't have to be doing a profession of faith to other people to show what it means to be a Christian.
I have a favorite expression, which is people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care.
That's right.
And I actually have a Protestant minister friend who talks about the concept of earning the right to share the love of Christ. We have to earn that right with people, and you're not going to earn it until they know how much you care, how much you love them, right? So earning the right to share the gospel message.
It's what Springtide research talks about with young people, and they say relational authority. You have authority to speak the faith. You have authority to share the love of God when you love them first. They might actually listen to you at that point.
Right. Chuck, that's a really good point. Both of you, it's a really, really good point. And I think, Chuck, some of the findings in the data about what young people are looking for is very important here.
Absolutely right. We know from all kinds of research that Generation Z, that we're all trying to engage and reach, is the loneliest generation in history. And if that's true, do we not have good news to share about not being lonely? They're not alone. And yet we've got to be part of the body of Christ standing with them, absolutely. And that, when you're an old guy like me, that is a bit of a challenge, but I have found if you just are kind and caring, people will often, regardless of their age, respond to that.
They're lonely. They're also looking for trusted relationships, right? And that can happen in many ways. I think this is a beautiful topic, engagement, essentially really also being in many ways an expression of evangelizing people, but just keeping them involved in their faith, showing them the faith, both internally to the church as well as those in the community, so that they're aware that there's a church there, and that church might help them if they simply know about it. Great talking with you guys. We've covered a couple of topics. Now we've got one more we're going to talk about next, and that is cultural relevance. Can't wait to find out what that is. Thanks again for today.
Join us next time on Enabling the Changing Catholic Church.